A single divination has shattered the veil of normalcy, plunging Klein Moretti into the chilling aftermath of a massacre at sea. Guided by a client's recurring nightmare, Klein uncovered a terrifying truth. The supposed hero of the Alfalfa tragedy, the amiable Tris, was in fact the architect of its horror, an instigator from the shadowy Theosophy order. As the Nighthawks launch a citywide hunt, Klein delves deeper into the secrets of the Beyonder world, only to find his own path as a seer is shrouded in unnerving mystery. His advancement promises not arcane wisdom, but the crafty skills of a fighter, a destiny as illogical as it is inescapable. Meanwhile, the very ritual he designed for his secret club has been enacted, its ethereal call reaching him from an unknown acolyte, further weaving him into a web of fates he cannot yet comprehend. But while Klein grapples with his own path, the true monster, Tris, meets with a mysterious benefactor. Believing he has earned his advancement, he is presented with his reward, the formula for Sequence 7. Yet, the name inscribed upon it is not what he expects. It is an impossible, twisted fate, which. What dark secret does this advancement hold, and what fresh horrors will this newly empowered killer unleash upon the city? The crimson moon high in the sky hung silently in the darkness. It illuminated Tingen city, the city of universities, as it gradually fell silent. Klein stood in front of his desk and looked through his oriel windows to see the empty Daffodil Street. He heard the sound of carriages quickly galloping far away without causing a din. He picked up his vine-leaf-patterned silver pocket watch and snapped it open. He took a glance at it and drew the curtains, making the yellowish lights of the gas lamp reflect back into the bedroom. Klein turned around at an adequate speed, locked his room, and switched off the gas valve. The room was immediately covered in darkness. Only a sliver of red moonlight penetrated the curtains. It gave rise to an atmosphere perfect for many late-night folk tales. Klein took out the silver knife he had applied for. He imagined the spherical light and entered a half-cogitation state. He focused his mind according to his previous practice, allowing his spirituality to spew out from the tip of his blade. Then, he allowed their motion to miraculously fuse with his surroundings, sealing off the room. He was doing it to prevent any abnormal stirrings that could wake Benson and Melissa. Following that, Klein put down the knife and walked 4 steps in a counterclockwise manner. Every step was accompanied by the incantation from Earth. The unchanging roars and murmurs inundated him. With the same mania and pain inflicted on him, he did his best to control himself and withstood the most grueling and dangerous stage in his half-conscious state. The grayish-white fog was endless. The dark red stars were at varying distances from him. The towering divine palace stood erect like a dead giant. Nothing seemed to have changed. The silence and antiquity that had accumulated over thousands of years swarmed him. No, there is a change. Klein silently muttered to himself, his gaze locked onto a dark red star near him. That was the star symbolizing justice. The star's deep redness began to pulse. It did so with average amplitude, but did not stop. Klein carefully spread out his spirituality towards the deep redness. The moment the two made contact, his head hummed. He saw a blurry and distorted scene and heard the illusory but stacked voice of prayers.
The fool that doesn't belong to this era, you are the mysterious ruler above the gray fog. You are the king of yellow and black who wields good luck. I pray for your help. I pray for your loving grace. I pray for you to give me a good dream.
The female voice resounded constantly in an intermittent fashion. Klein's psyche turned more irritable and chaotic. It was akin to listening to someone upstairs pounding on the floor when he had just fallen asleep. He repressed his emotions and used cogitation to calm the urge. He carefully discerned the blurry scene that appeared before him. It was a girl dressed in white robes. She had a head of beautiful golden hair. She was standing before 4 flickering flames, her head lowered as she kept chanting. From the distorted image, Klein barely recognized her to be Miss Justice. At this point, he confirmed that the ritual incantation he had created could precisely point towards the gray fog, towards him. This gave him a huge sense of achievement, going from nothing to having something. I won't praise myself for being awesome. Klein's mood turned for the better. He felt that the pleading voice that echoed in his ears like a buzzing fly was now acceptable. With a thought, he attempted to create a response in his mind, transferring it through the intricate connection to the dark red star. I'm aware. The gray layer emanated before him. A distorted and blurry figure stood in the deepest depths. The spot where his eyes ought to be swirled with deep redness as his voice resounded repeatedly in the vast and empty world. I'm aware. I'm aware. I'm aware. Audrey Hall was jolted awake suddenly. She sat up with her blanket wrapped around her as her mind was fully occupied with the scenes she saw in her dream. She knew very well that she had dreamed of the Fool, the mysterious being that lived above the fog. Audrey, who quickly entered her spectator state, calmed down and analyzed.
Is this a response to my morning prayers?
Although she did not understand why the Fool did not respond on the spot and only did so at night, she was still shocked that the ritualistic magic was effective with the few lines of incantation.
In the past, she had prayed to the Evernight goddess, but had never received any response.
Even if Mr. Fool was not a god, he is likely not far from being one.
Audrey slowly inhaled before slowly exhaling. Since he was a powerful existence that she had no means of resisting, she quickly threw aside her worries. She began considering what to do next.
First, I have to completely digest the spectator potion. My acting is still pretty good. Second, I have to seek out the psychology alchemists. Third, I should try to obtain the telepathist potion formula from Mr. Fool or clues regarding the psychology alchemists elsewhere. However, every godlike existence should have a complete sequence pathway that belongs to them. They might not know the formulas of other sequence pathways. A new Beyonder organization like the psychology alchemists might not be able to garner Mr. Fool's attention.
With the connection severed, Klein sat at the bronze table's seat of honor in a rather good mood. He was completely covered in gray fog. He leaned back and clenched his fist to cover his mouth. He recalled and analyzed the process. At that moment, he was the only living being in the world of the gray fog. Apart from that, there was absolute silence.
It seems I can only pass information over and am unable to use the powers in here. From the looks of it, my idea of manipulation would not work.
Klein kept prodding his mouth as he silently made a conclusion. He had originally planned on attempting to bind his body with the world of the gray fog in the same manner if the incantation and ritual proved effective. As such, he could then leverage all the power of this mysterious space. If that happened, he could pray to himself, and through such a manipulative manner, he could go around the limitations, the mysteries, and the danger, allowing him to fully use the gray fog world. For example, he could first conduct a ritual and pray to himself 4 spells. Following that, he could come above the gray fog and answer his own request and bestow it.
From the looks of it, I was being too idealistic. My understanding and control of the gray fog world has not reached that level.
Klein shook his head in a self-deprecating manner and planned on leaving. At that moment, he saw the dark red star that represented the hanged man begin to pulse. He heard an ethereal and formless voice spread out. Klein nodded in thought. I coincidentally chanced upon the hanged man's ritual. He sat at the seat of honor of the long bronze table and extended his hand to tap on the star. His spirituality spread as it touched the pulsing deep redness. He heard the hanged man's heavy and repeated prayers along with a blurry scene. The hanged man was draped in a pure black robe in the scene. He stood in front of 4 plumes of fire. The surrounding spirituality had formed a wall, isolating him from any external influence. Klein did not immediately respond. All he did was watch and listen silently. After the hanged man finished his prayer, he waited for a while. Seeing that there was no response, he began dismantling the spirituality wall, extinguished the candles, and tidied up the altar. Finally, he swiped his extended hand as aqueous light spread out, making the altar table look brand new. Water-based spell. The bestowment of the storm. The hanged man is indeed at least a seafarer. Klein nodded slightly. Before the scene vanished, he responded via the method he imagined, transmitting it through the blob of dark redness. Alger Wilson was situated in the Rorstad Archipelago's city of generosity. He had not gone with the sailors to the famous Red Cabaret. Instead, he stayed inside the hotel and sealed the door and windows shut to attempt the ritual the fool had described. After familiarly finishing the prayer, Alger waited patiently for a moment, but did not receive any response.
It seems this attempt isn't too successful. Mr. Fool needs to change methods.
He was both overjoyed, but also a little disappointed. After everything was done, Alger planned on going downstairs for a bottle of Langsky-proof alcohol that could aid a folk of rage to unleash his powers. Mandated punishers of the Lord of Storms were rather fond of this sort of beverage. Pulling open the door, Alger was about to walk out when his vision blurred. He saw gray fog billow in the corridor and a hazy human figure sitting in the deepest depths of the fog, as if on a high throne. "I'm aware." The familiar deep voice reverberated around Alger's ears, causing him to freeze where he stood as his head slightly throbbed in pain. Alger's eyes suddenly turned dark. He looked around but realized that nothing had changed. There was still the same squeaky floorboard, the same aged wall candlestands, and the same unclean corridor. "I'm aware." The voice was still resounding by Alger's ears. His expression sank as he hit his chest lightly with his fist but did not say any words of respect to the Lord of Storms. After a long silence, Alger's expression was restored to normal, but his gaze seemed deeper. Klein did not spend too much time above the gray fog. When all the remnant voices returned to normal, he enveloped himself in his spirituality and plunged into the gray fog, plummeting into the material world. The lights before him flew by rapidly, like the scenes of a movie played back at a speed tens of times faster than normal. After Klein felt faint, he saw curtains that let crimson moonlight through along with the blurry outlines of the desk and bookshelf. He picked up the silver knife again and removed the spirituality wall in the room. Then, a sudden gust of wind opened the door and went through the corridor. He was completely relieved when he saw that there were no stirrings from Benson's or Melissa's room. This luck enhancement ritual is really indispensable for traveling. It's concealed and mystical. Klein silently murmured and closed the door again, walking towards his bed. His mission tomorrow was to head to the underground markets for Beyonder items with Old Neil. At dusk, the setting sun cast long shadows of the carriages and horses. Having informed Benson and Melissa that he was having dinner at the Blackthorn Security Company, Klein headed to the harbor with Old Neil on a public carriage. He was dressed in cheap formal attire, afraid that conflict might break out in such a complicated location. If he damaged his tuxedo, which he took painstaking care of, he would probably cry his heart out. When the sunlight appeared to turn fiery, the carriage stopped. Old Neil, in his usual classic black robe and felt black hat with a rounded edge, ignored the gazes of others and walked diagonally to the Evil Dragon bar and ahead of them. Even though the bar was slightly far away and the heavy doors were tightly shut, Klein still heard wave after wave of rapturous shouts. They appeared to be cheering on a hero. When he came close, he suddenly sensed something. He turned his head towards the warehouse opposite to the bar. He saw a stocky man dressed in a uniform standing at a hidden corner on the rooftop. The man carried a huge grayish-white mechanical box and held a thick rifle in his hand. The grayish-white mechanical box was obviously connected to the same colored rifle via piping. Klein muttered in shock. Steam-pressured rifle? He looked at old Neil and said, "This bar can actually obtain such weapons?" That was a military-controlled item. Although it used extracted phlogiston, the size and weight of the steam backpack were still shocking, something only a true warrior of blood and iron could withstand. The rifle had an extremely high muzzle velocity and shocking destructive power too. Matched with a suitable scope, it was nearly equivalent to an inferior sniper rifle. Old Neil squinted his eyes as he looked over, having a confused look too.
What? Did something happen here?
Something happened? Klein surveyed his surroundings and discovered a few more men holding repeating rifles who were searching for something. Old Neil approached the bar and asked the brawny man guarding its door outside.
What happened?
The brawny man obviously knew old Neil and smiled wryly.
The bar was nearly destroyed earlier. Apparently a wanted man was here trying to buy materials and was recognized, and this was what resulted from it. Oh Lord, what did he do, and how dangerous was he to receive such treatment? My legs would limp seeing all those firearms, limper than after spending an entire night with Ginger Sonny.
He did not know the identity of the wanted man, much less know that the people who came to buy materials had Beyonders mixed in. Old Neil asked in interest.
Wanted man? Do you know his name?
The brawny man answered uncertainly.
I think it was Tris or something?
Instigator Tris. Klein nodded in enlightenment, having understood what was happening. Tris did not know that Joyce Meyer had cast his suspicion on him, therefore, he had sauntered right into the market to purchase materials without heed. He was likely recognized by an informant of either the machinery hive mind or the Nighthawks, resulting in an intense clash. Klein tapped his silver-inlaid black cane and asked, "Was he caught?" Based on the surrounding situation, likely not. The brawny man shook his head slightly and gestured with his chin to the rooftop of the warehouse opposite him.
He rushed out before those terrifying guys arrived. Bloody hell, I've never seen a man run faster than he did.
You haven't seen the true skills of an assassin, or you might be taken away to some indescribable place for further re-education. Old Neil changed subjects and asked,
Is the market still open?
The brawny man replied affirmatively.
It just restored operations.
Old Neil quickened his pace and extended his right hand, pushing open the heavy door.
That's great!
Klein followed closely in tow and walked in. He nearly fainted at the stuffiness and smell of alcohol that inundated him. In the middle of Evil Dragon Bar was a boxing ring. Two half-naked men were in an intense brawl and surrounding them were dozens of customers shouting and cheering on the side they supported with no lack of vulgarities. Old Neil ignored them and led Klein around the boxing ring and walked into a billiard room at the back. In the billiard room, there were two people holding cue sticks, having a casual conversation. When they saw old Neil enter, they instantly fell silent for a few seconds. After confirming the visitor's identity, they moved aside and let old Neil and Klein pass through the secret door behind them. After passing through a few rooms, the sight before Klein's eyes opened up. He saw a place that was about the size of a lecture hall from his previous life. Some vendors had set up roadside stalls with bottles and cans all over. Passers-by strolled through them, either scrutinizing their goods, chatting, or comparing prices. Old Neil explained in a garrulous manner.
They have to give 5% of their profits to Swain. Ah, he is the boss of Evil Dragon Bar, former captain of a mandated Punisher squad and older than I am. He's someone who wishes to drink himself to his death.
Klein thought and gave an honest evaluation. A rather profitable business. After all, his only expense was providing the venue and protection.
Old Neil trailed off as he gnashed his teeth.
If any item catches your fancy but you lack the money, you can borrow from Swain, but of course, he charges a very high interest.
As expected, It's like running a casino, they would provide usuries. Klein held his walking stick and looked around as he asked curiously. Mr. Swain is a seafarer? The captain of a mandated Punisher squad was likely a Sequence 7. Old Neil scoffed.
No, he is only a folk of rage. Tingen is not a coastal city, so the Church of the Goddess is much more powerful than Lord of Storms here. Actually, Swain had the chance of becoming a seafarer, but was afraid that he would lose control, so he chose to give up.
Just as Klein was about to ask if the boss of the bar had any experience of nearly losing control, he suddenly felt a strange phenomenon happen on his left. There appeared to be something hidden there, muttering and recounting. Klein turned his head and saw a pale young man. He was wearing an old linen shirt and blue jeans that the working class normally wore. His eyes looked demoralized with a hint of craziness, and he was constantly mumbling. Klein creased his eyebrows and muttered. His spiritual perception is very high. Or perhaps, distorted? It was the young man's spiritual perception that triggered his own spiritual perception. Generally speaking, spiritual perception sensing something causes some interaction. It was nearly impossible to conceal it from others, but others referred to spirit mediums who had cast their abilities, as well as powerful figures with similar special traits. A beyonder like Klein would actually find it hard to detect, only detecting if one's spiritual perception reached a certain heightened level, or an abnormal distortion happened. They made eye contact and the pale young man with messy black hair walked towards him with an expression looking as though he was half sleepwalking and half insane. He stopped before Klein and stared at him. Suddenly, he guffawed.
Haha, it's the smell of death, death! Ah!
Before he was done talking, he suddenly screamed tragically. His eyes shut tightly as liquid with the color of blood flowed out. The young man cried out.
Ah! Darn it!
And covered his eyes, hugging his head. He struggled on the ground and only calmed down after a while. He then lay there panting. During the entire process, not a single customer or stall vendor looked over. Klein pressed down his half-top hat and looked at old Neil. Klein's mouth was hanging open in shock, using his actions to demonstrate his shock and to request for advice. Old Neil shook his head as he explained.
Don't mind him. He's Adamasol, an orphan, nicknamed Monster. He was born with high spiritual perception, and he has always been able to see things that he shouldn't, hear voices that he shouldn't. Hence, he is always raving and often getting hurt.
He could tell that my body was once dead? Klein knitted his eyebrows and lowered his voice as he asked in doubt. Haven't the Nighthawks, mandated Punishers, or the machinery hive mind ever thought of taking him in?
Old Neil said with a sigh.
No, we do not have the sequence potion that suits him.
Right, he was born with the starting point of half a sequence. Klein asked again curiously. What sequence pathway suits him? Old Neil replied softly.
The sequence 9 that suits him is called Monster. His nickname came from there. It's a pity that only the life school of thought has control over the sequence pathways beginning.
He tried to keep the conversation between him and Klein from the people around them to avoid leaking information to mysticism aficionados. Life school of thought? Klein recalled the information he had previously read. The secret organization appeared in the beginning of the current epoch. Its actual origins were unknown, but it was mainly passed down via master and disciple. Their theories and beliefs were hardly known. Klein only knew that they separated the world into 3 layers: the definite rational world, also known as the absolute truth world, the spirit's world, and the material world. Rumor had it that the secret organization had once produced a soothsayer. Wasn't that a sequence pathway that corresponded to Seer? Confusing, really confusing. Klein shook his head and saw Adamasol struggle to get up and then wander off to another corner. He reorganized his thoughts and followed behind old Neil. They walked past one stall after another. There were plants like moonflower, fingered citron, night vanilla, and mineral resources like silver, topaz, ruby and so on. Klein muttered softly. It's really very well equipped. The mysticism aficionados of all ages and genders around him would be stopping, distinguishing, or talking at times. It gave the area a bustling vibe. Old Neil pointed at one of the two rooms at the end.
Walk around on your own. I am going to settle my bill.
Klein nodded without thought. All right. He strolled with his black cane and came before a stall which sold self-made amulets. He took a careful look at it for a while. Just when Klein prepared to speak with the seller, he suddenly heard someone asking the stall behind him.
Is this powder ground from cow teeth pianol?
Cow teeth pianol? Isn't that one of the supplementary ingredients of the spectator potion? Klein thought, then turned around to look at the inquirer. Justice had repeated the formula for the potion several times, so Klein had been left with a remarkably clear impression of the ingredients. Klein looked over and saw the person inquiring about the cow teeth pianol. The man was less than a meter away from him. He was wearing a black suit and a half-top hat of the same color. He had a cane adorned with silver in his hand and a pair of gold-framed spectacles on his face. He had a refined bearing. The owner of the stall, who was wearing a long black robe filled with mysticism traits, said,
Yes, do you need it? This can here costs 3 soli.
The inquirer, whose sideburns were pale yellow, thought for a moment before saying,
Can it be cheaper? I still need to buy other ingredients too. For example, this bottle of white-edged sunflower petals.
The stall owner considered for a few seconds before grudgingly replying,
2 soli and 6 pence. I don't think you can find a price cheaper than that.
Klein immediately felt that he was overthinking things after seeing how the bespectacled man was buying ingredients other than the cow teeth pianol. However, he still tapped his glabella twice as an act of caution. He swept the man with his spirit vision. No problems. He looks very healthy. His emotions are all right too. Mister, you need to keep this up. Klein retracted his gaze, turned around, and looked at the stall selling homemade amulets once again. The amulets were placed neatly before him. Some of them were made of pure silver, some with steel, others forged from gold. But only a few of the amulets had a weak aura emanating from them, some crimson, some pale white, some golden. This meant that some of them had weak traces of spirituality and were definitely effective to a certain extent. Klein looked at the amulets carefully and confirmed that the stall owner making the amulets had some foundation in mysticism. The stall owner did not make any mistakes matching the different energy sources to the different incantations. He was also extremely accurate at choosing the materials that corresponded to the different energy sources. Of course, a mere mysticism aficionado would definitely make some mistakes. Klein noticed that the stall owner did not fully understand the incantations. One could not create an incantation simply by translating the content of the prayer into Hermes. The incantations had to follow a certain format that followed unique rules. The other problem was that the stall owner had made mistakes of varying degrees when he was choosing a suitable symbol for the energy sources. That explained why there were only 2 or 3 amulets releasing the faint light out of the dozens that were laid before him. As for how much of an effect the 2 to 3 amulets would have, Klein could only say that it was better than nothing. An amulet that was truly equipped with obvious effects needed the craftsman to release his spirituality from a blade while carving the incantations and symbols. If one wanted even better results, they would have to supplement it with ritualistic magic. And these 2 things were not something an ordinary person could achieve. Klein tapped his glabella twice, then pointed at the upper left corner of the stall with his black cane. How much for these 2? He did not ask about the amulets that had a rudimentary colored aura, but half-completed items. Other than external shape, they had not been carved with incantations or symbols. To Klein, there was no reason to purchase the amulets that had weak effects. What he wanted to do was to transform the half-completed amulets into true amulets. I'll make amulets that can protect a person from danger, one each for Benson and Melissa. As for my own, I can ask the Nighthawks to supply me with the ingredients. Man, I must have been influenced by old Neil. I don't feel any guilt when doing something like that. Klein's mind wandered as he watched the stall owner pick up the half-completed silver amulets. The first silver amulet was elongated and had a cavity in the middle. Around it were patterns of angel-like feathers. The craftsmanship was intricate and was very beautiful. The other was simple, almost completely devoid of any additional decorations or carvings. It had a vertical line representing the night, and a circle representing the crimson moon.
Klein, who paid much attention to appearances, took a liking to them immediately.
The middle-aged stall owner, a man of few words, pointed to the intricate amulet and said,
"This is 6 soli."
After pausing for a while, he rubbed the simpler piece and said,
"This is 5 soli 3 pence.
Klein had slowly been influenced by Benson and Melissa, so he had begun cultivating the habit of haggling. He said, "That's too expensive. They are still far from being an amulet." After a battle of words, he bought the 2 silver accessories at 5 soli 6 pence and 4 soli 9 pence respectively. Yeah, they can only be considered silver accessories for the time being. Klein had that in mind. The 10 soli 3 pence was deducted from the reimbursement he received for his divination club membership. Klein received the 2 silver accessories and placed them into his pocket. He was about to head to another stall when he heard a gentle voice.
"Sir, why are you not buying a completed amulet?"
Klein turned his head over and found a teenage girl asking him the question. She was about 15 years of age and wore a lacy yellow dress while holding onto a veiled hat with a ribbon. Klein minced his words and answered, "It's because I intend to make my own amulets. As you know, that is the wish of every aficionado of mysticism." He did not wish to make the stall owner think that he was trying to snatch his business, even though he had considered using his skill to earn a quick buck. The teenage girl had naturally curly brown hair, and her face was adorable due to her baby fat. She looked at Klein with her light blue eyes and asked sincerely,
"Can I seek your advice on choosing an amulet?" "Well, I was introduced here by a friend. I've been here several times and have a deep interest in mysticism, but I still do not know too much about it, and she, my friend, is going to turn 16 soon. I wish to select an amulet as a gift to her. I didn't bring her along as I want it to be a surprise." I had previously sought her advice, but I cannot remember a lot of the critical points.
Klein gave a gentlemanly smile. "What kind of protection amulets are you looking for? Something to avert disasters? Something to avoid illnesses? Something that gives fortune?" Different requirements would require different energy sources, which means that they must point to different gods. Different gods would have different corresponding constellations, and the different constellations would mean that different materials have to be used. For example, the incantation for averting disasters would belong to the Empress of Disaster and Horror, who is the Evernight goddess. As mysticism aficionados, we all know that the symbol of the Evernight goddess is the moon. The corresponding metal would thus be pure silver. Therefore, if we hope to avert disasters, it is best that we choose an amulet that is made of pure silver and has the corresponding incantations.
We would also have to make sure that the incantations are of the correct language and format. The corresponding symbol of the Empress of Disaster and Horror means the path number, the spell's characteristic, and the relative positions of the symbols, etc., must also be correct. But this is too complicated, and there's no need for me to explain this for you. Klein added inwardly. The girl's eyes sparkled. She asked with a little doubt,
"Can a follower of the goddess wear an amulet belonging to another god?"
Klein consoled her. "No problem, the gods do not mind such small matters."
It was not a problem for the person wearing the amulet, but the person creating the amulet had to be careful. If a believer of the Lord of Storms were to craft an amulet of the eternal blazing sun, they would most likely receive something malicious. Of course, these referred to amulets requiring the aid of ritualistic magic. The craftsman need not pay much attention to this otherwise.
The teenage girl heaved a sigh of relief.
I hope to get her an amulet for good health. Which deity should I choose from? The eternal blazing sun, Mother Earth, or the god of knowledge and wisdom?
Klein smiled as he said, "There should be no problem with the eternal blazing sun and Mother Earth. The former is represented by the sun while the latter is represented by the brown star. The material of the sun is gold, while the metal that symbolizes the brown star is lead. I would suggest the sun, but I do not know if you brought enough money along with you."
The reason for his suggestion was because he had noticed that among the 3 amulets with a rudimentary spiritual glow, one of them was a health amulet that came under the domain of the sun.
Isn't this?
Before the teenage girl finished her sentence, she stopped and warily looked at the stall owner who was waiting silently. She thought for a moment before asking,
After I decide on the material, how should I distinguish the incantation and corresponding symbols?
Klein asked instead. Do you know Hermes?
I just started learning it.
The teenage girl replied, a little embarrassed. Klein pointed at the health amulet made of gold and said,
"Then let me choose it for you. This one has no problems, be it in the incantations or the representing symbol." The teenage girl lifted the edges of her dress and squatted in front of the amulet. She picked up the health amulet with designs of the sun's rays around its edges. She felt as though the amulet was nourishing her, making her feel completely relaxed. She stood up and curtsied in gratitude.
Thank you, thank you.
Klein laughed and said, "I'll leave the rest to you and the stall owner. I have other things to tend to."
He looked at the stall owner as he spoke and noticed that the man had a weird look in his eyes, as if deciding if he had to give a cut of the profit to Klein.
With a smile, Klein did not bother with the matter anymore. He continued touring the underground market, but he didn't notice any true extraordinary materials.
At this point, old Neil had already paid off his debt. He was holding a dark-colored wooden box in his hands. After he noticed Klein's look of doubt, he pointed to the other room behind and said,
Go there if you wish to buy or sell extraordinary materials. After all, no one wishes to let others know what extraordinary items they are purchasing.
I understand. Klein nodded as though in thought. There was no need for him to go there for the time being. He headed toward the exit of the underground market together with old Neil.
How much for these elf flowers?
A query suddenly entered Klein's ears. Elf flowers. That's also an ingredient for the spectator potion. Klein thought as he glanced sideways. He once again saw the refined bespectacled man. Old Neil asked curiously,
What's the matter?
Nothing much. Klein retracted his gaze. Although he was a quasi-member of the Nighthawks, he did not feel that all Beyonders had to be absorbed by the churches or locked up. He believed that it had to depend on the situation. Spectators definitely posed little danger to society or the kingdom, and the chances of losing control as a Sequence 9 were very slim. After leaving Evil Dragon Bar, Klein and old Neil took a public carriage and left the harbor. They then split ways at the North Borough and headed back to their respective homes. The public transport steered into Daffodil Street and stopped by the side of the road. Klein was about to get off the carriage when he suddenly saw a young lady wearing a grayish-white dress about to board the carriage. This lady had smooth black hair, her face a little round. She had thin eyes and unassuming features, but paired together, she gave off the feeling that she was sweet and gentle. Klein noticed her not because of her beauty, but because he discovered that her body was shuddering slightly. It was an unnatural shudder. Klein asked in concern, "Miss, are you all right?" The young lady shook her head abruptly.
No, I am just too tired.
The people behind Klein were urging for him to get off, so Klein could only leave the carriage. When he found his footing, he paid attention to the situation from before again. He pinched his glabella twice, planning to determine if the lady was indeed all right. He had the intention of sending her to the hospital if she had a serious illness that was going to act up soon. Activating his spirit vision, the colors of the auras started to surface. Klein turned around and prepared to look at the sweet and gentle young lady. The sound of horses' hooves echoed as the wheels began rolling in tow. Despite activating his spirit vision and turning around, hoping to observe the refined and sweet lady, Klein did not have his wishes fulfilled. All his eyes reflected were brown figures moving past him. Meanwhile, the passengers from the stop had already boarded the carriage. The carriage door was closed tightly as it gradually departed. Within the carriage, 20 to 30 people stood closely to each other, their energy fields overlapping and shielding each other. Hence, it was an explosion of colors in Klein's vision, making it difficult for him to differentiate. He shook his head quietly and raised his finger to tap his glabella to deactivate his spirit vision. To him, it was simply help he could provide if he happened to chance upon it. However, if he were to miss it, and the situation was not especially clear, there was no point taking it to heart and delaying his own matters. While bathing in the crimson moonlight, Klein strolled back home on the still bustling Daffodil Street. He returned to see Melissa sitting beside the dining table. She was busy doing her homework under a bright gas lamp. She bit at the fountain pen and frowned, appearing deep in thought. Klein asked casually, "Where's Benson?" Melissa looked up. She blanked out for a few seconds before saying,
He said he went around a few boroughs today and was covered in sweat. He's taking a nice relaxing bath.
All right.
Klein chuckled. Suddenly, he realized that she was wearing a dress he had never seen before. It was entirely beige in color. It had fashionable engagiantes. The collar and edges of her top had thin frills. Apart from that, it was a rather simple design, the type one wore as daily casual clothing. It fully accentuated the youth of a 16 or 17-year-old.
Klein asked with a smile. New dress?
It was a purchase that he and Benson had insisted upon. Melissa answered in the affirmative tersely.
I just took it back from Mrs. Rochelle. I was thinking that since I had to wash it later, I might as well try it on first.
Klein was rather puzzled when he heard that. Mrs. Rochelle? Wasn't she our former neighbor? Melissa nodded and explained in all seriousness.
Mrs. Rochelle is actually a seamstress, but she was quite unlucky. She had no choice but to sew and mend clothes for others at home. She leads a pretty tough life. I knew that she had pretty good skill and the price she quoted is cheaper than at a women's clothing store. Furthermore, it's very well tailored to my figure, so I ordered a new skirt from her. It only cost 9 soldi and 5 pence and took only a few days. A dress of a similar style would cost 3/2 of a pound at Harrods department store.
What a frugal girl. Sis, I know that at least half the reason is due to your pity of Mrs. Rochelle. Klein did not reproach Melissa for deciding things for herself. Instead, he said with a smile,
When did you go to Harrods?
That was at House Street, near the Divination Club. It was somewhere where the middle class shopped. Melissa was momentarily at a loss for words. It took her a long while before she said,
It was Selina and Elizabeth. They insisted I accompany them. Actually, I actually prefer gears more. I like places with steam and machinery. Yeah.
Klein laughed as he comforted his sister. It's quite, nice for a girl to occasionally shop at a department store.
After some idle talk, he briskly walked to the second floor, hoping to wash away the repulsive mixed smells from the bar. Just as he was about to return to his bedroom to get a change of clothes, he suddenly heard sounds coming from the bathroom close to the balcony. A few seconds later, Benson stepped out while drying his gradually receding hairline.
He shot a glance at Klein and asked with a smile.
How was it? Did you compliment Melissa's new dress?
I guess I forgot. All I did was ask where it was done. Klein thought for a moment as he said.
Benson immediately chortled and shook his head.
How unbecoming of an elder brother. When Melissa received the dress, she couldn't bear putting it down. After rushing to cook and wash the dishes, she immediately wore the dress and has refused to take it off ever since.
Wasn't she planning on changing after showering? She can wash and starch the clothes while doing so. Klein subconsciously refuted with the explanation that Melissa had given.
Benson sighed.
TSK, it's been scorching the past few days. She was busy in the kitchen for a long time, so I believe she would feel much better doing her homework after a shower.
That's right. Klein was suddenly enlightened as he gave his brother a knowing smile. So that's what kind of person you are, Melissa. There's nothing wrong with a girl caring for her appearance. There's no need to find excuses. The corners of his mouth curved up as he shook his head gently before walking into his bedroom.
While he was showering, Klein faintly heard knocking downstairs. He immediately wondered. Doesn't the worker who's in charge of collecting coins for the gas meter come only once every 2 weeks? Could it be Mrs. Choud from next door? That can't be. It's said that this lady strictly abides by the etiquette of middle-class society. She would not visit at an inappropriate time. In his puzzlement, Klein wiped dry his body. Wearing old but comfortable shirt and trousers, he came down the stairs. He surveyed the area but did not notice any strangers. He asked. Was someone at the door just now?
Benson, who was reading the newspapers casually, said with a smile.
It was Bitch Mountbatten, one of the policemen in charge of Iron Cross Street. He asked if we met an 18 or 19-year-old boy who has a rotund face. He even gave us a sketch to identify. Unfortunately, neither one of us have seen him, or we would have received a reward. What about you?
Nope. Klein had a general idea what was happening. Instigator Tris had successfully escaped the evil dragon bar at the harbor. He had escaped somewhere close to Iron Cross Street and Daffodil Street, therefore, the police were making visits from door to door. And to go this far made it clear that the operation of nabbing the instigator had completely failed. Klein did not bother himself with the situation. He had yet to begin combat training. He only had basic mastery of shooting, so to consider dealing with a natural assassin was simply using his life as a joke. He did not sleep well that night. He kept worrying that the instigator would infiltrate their house to hide, causing another massacre.
Thankfully, Daffodil Street was quiet the entire night, with the morning sun rays dispersing all the fog. The relaxed Klein changed into formal attire, wore his top hat, held his cane, and went all the way to Zitland Street. He greeted Roseanne at the reception hall. Roseanne replied happily, suppressing her voice.
Good morning, Klein. I heard the huge operation last night failed?
Klein asked in curiosity. The operation to nab Instigator Tris? Roseanne nodded heavily and shot a glance at the partition.
Yeah, apparently an informant of the mandated punishers discovered the instigator at the harbor. They were planning on waiting for additional Beyonders and another special operations squad from the police to arrive before beginning the operation to do the deed instantly without alarming the commoners. Unfortunately, that instigator was extremely sharp. He charged out of the encirclement when he noticed something amiss, successfully escaping as a result.
Klein made a joke. At such times, they need a Beyonder with tracking abilities, such as me.
There was no lack of trackers back then.
Dunn Smith's voice suddenly sounded. Roseanne turned her head abruptly and saw the captain wearing his black trench coat. He was glaring right at her with his deep pair of gray eyes while leaning against the partition's frame. She hurriedly raised her hands to cover her mouth. Then, she shook her head incessantly, expressing her futile innocence. Dunn turned his gaze to Klein and after some thought, he said.
There were a total of 6 Beyonders from the mandated Punishers, the Machinery Hive Mind, and us Nighthawks. We traced the injured Tris to Iron Cross Street Slower Street. We found his temporary residence, but the clues ended there. Be it Beyonder methods or ordinary investigations, nothing worked. It was as though he evaporated into thin air, disappearing completely.
Klein asked probingly. Do you need my help with divination? Dunn shook his head gently.
The Machinery Hive Mind had a mystery prior. He is a senior Beyonder as good as old Neil. I even suspect that he's already at sequence 8. I'm just unaware what the name of the corresponding potion is.
Klein consoled him. The Theosophy Order's heritage to this day must have something special about it. For the rest of the morning, he continued his mysticism curriculum, read the historical information and documents, and practiced various techniques just like always. With lunchtime almost approaching, Klein's mind began to wander. Another few minutes later, he put away the documents, having heard the summoning of his stomach. At that moment, Dunn Smith came into the clerk office. He said in a deep but mild manner.
Klein, follow me to Cheney's Gate. Sealed artifact 2-049 has arrived. The subsequent operation might require your sensing of that notebook.
All right. Klein got up and replied. His thoughts became scrambled. He imagined how the sealed artifact would look or if the operation would be dangerous. While in this rather tense silence, he followed Dunn down the stairs and into the tunnel. After going straight at the intersection, Dunn suddenly stopped and turned his head, saying sternly,
Do this action together with me. Keep doing it and absolutely do not stop. Remember, absolutely do not stop. This is for your own safety.
While speaking, Dunn bent his arm followed by extending it. He repeated this action without stopping. Klein looked at the captain demonstrate in a befuddled manner. Suddenly enlightened, he asked. Has this got to do with the uniqueness of the sealed artifact?
Yes.
Dunn nodded with abnormal seriousness.
Repeating such an action will allow us to discover if anything happens to you immediately. Saving you in time will not result in any life-threatening dangers.
Okay. Klein did not hesitate further as he began the repeated action of bending and extending his arm. Dunn added.
If your arm is sore, use the other one.
Sealed artifact 2-049 sure is odd. What meaning does this action have? It seems very dangerous. These thoughts flashed past Klein's mind as he looked solemnly at the captain. All right. He had too many questions on his mind, but since Cheney's Gate was in sight, he had no choice but to bear with it.
Besides, with my security clearance, I'll probably not learn of the details. I can only do as I'm ordered. Klein exhaled as he followed Captain Dunn to the keeper room outside Cheney's Gate.
Klein repeatedly bent and extended his arm as he watched Dunn push open the keeper's room with his body sideways. The captain's carefulness and high alertness, as well as the ridiculous and laughable protective actions, left him feeling abnormally tensed. The feeling was identical to what he felt when taking tests of courage that required him to walk through spooky cemeteries at night in his youth. A Grade 2 sealed artifact, dangerous, to be used with care and moderation. It is something even a formal Nighthawk member does not know the details to. It is unknown how dangerous it is. Amid his tense nerves, Klein found it impossible to curb himself from overthinking. At that moment, his brain suddenly turned numb as though a power switch had been flicked off. Everything in Klein's vision turned slow, even his arm actions shared the same fate. He saw Captain Dunn stop in his tracks. He came close to him as though in slow motion, extending his palm out slowly before pushing him in the shoulder. Suddenly, Klein's thought processes and vision were restored to normal at the same time. It was as though everything from before was just an illusion. He whispered amid his fright and confusion. "What happened?" Dunn shook his head and said in a deep voice.
"Observe carefully."
The moment he finished his sentence, he turned around and walked into the keeper's room. Klein followed closely behind and saw 4 other people in the room. They were either seated or standing. One of them was the midnight poet, Leonard. The other 3 were people Klein had never met before. However, all of them shared a common trait. They were all doing the extending and bending arm exercise with utmost seriousness. Dunn gave a brief introduction.
Klein Moretti has a miraculous connection with the Antigonus family's notebook.
Then, he pointed to the other 3 strangers and said,
"These lady and gentlemen are colleagues from the Backland Diocese. They escorted sealed artifact 2-049 here. This is Madame Lorata, Sequence 8 Gravedigger. She is a master sharpshooter."
At that moment, the black-haired woman who looked about 30 nodded at Klein in a friendly manner.
She looked pretty good. She did not wear a hat and was dressed in what appeared like male attire, a black coat with a white shirt, tight black trousers and black leather boots. The corners of her mouth were slightly curved up. After Klein exchanged greetings, Dunn pointed to a man seated behind the desk.
"Iyer Harson, someone just like me."
Before he finished his sentence, Klein saw Mr. Iyer Harson in his gray windbreaker turn sluggish with his arm motion. It was as though a gear had lost its lubricant or a joint covered in rust. "What's wrong?" Amid Klein's daze, he saw Lorata push Iyer Harson. Only then did the gentleman's actions return to normal. "Was I like that previously?" Klein was first taken aback before he came to the realization.
This indicated the dangers that sealed artifact 02-49 held.
What would happen if one was not awoken in time? Would one become a zombie? Filled with questions, Klein greeted the charming middle-aged Iyer Harson. Dunn said as he pointed to the last Nighthawk.
"Borgia."
Borgia was a cold man with a knife scar on the side of his face. His sharp brown eyes were like an eagle's. He was constantly observing everyone in the room. The handsome Iyer Harson said as he stood, his eyes revealing some wrinkles.
"Let's set off. The faster we end this, the faster we can seal 2-049.
So, where's 2-049? Klein surveyed his surroundings curiously but did not notice any traces of the sealed artifact. Of course, he could not see the areas obscured by the table without activating his spirit vision. Dunn turned and looked at Leonard Mitchell.
"All right, you'll be in charge of driving. It is best not to involve Cesare with matters like this."
Cesare was the clerk in charge of procuring and collecting supplies for the Tingen Nighthawks while standing in as a carriage driver. He was the one who drove Klein to Welch's home to meet the spirit medium daily. Leonard stopped acting frivolous and nodded seriously.
"No problem."
At that moment, Klein saw Iyer Harson bending over. He picked up a black metal chest which had been obscured by the table. The chest was carved with resplendent stars and the crimson full moon. It was as though there was a formless barrier around the chest. The sealed artifact should be inside there? I wonder what 2-049 looks like. Klein observed the chest curiously.
A series of violent knocks suddenly erupted from the black chest. Even the surface of the chest bulged time and time again. The percussive impacts echoed as though something horrifying had awakened within the chest and was pounding wildly. The sound of the knocking was beaten into the hearts of everyone present.
It's alive? Just as Klein had a thought, he saw Captain Dunn's arm exercises turning sluggish, as if his joints were layered with glue. Borgia, the Nighthawk from Backland, pushed Dunn's shoulder, allowing him to recover. It's like doing the robot dance when one is affected by 2-049. If all of us are under its influence, wouldn't we be some awkward dance squad? Luckily, 2-049 seems capable of only influencing one person at a time. Klein lampooned to relax his tense nerves. He did not dare halt his arm exercises. He followed Dunn's lead and left his cane behind. He then followed behind the 5 Nighthawks through the tunnel and up the stairs to the second floor of the Blackthorn Security Company. Leonard had gone ahead and notified everyone in the front of the buildings, so Roseanne and the rest had all made their way to the 3rd level. These incidents rarely involved them, but they were not completely alien to them. Another Nighthawk, Kenley, had replaced Dunn in his watch over Cheney's gate. Klein heaved a sigh of relief when he reached the carriage. He looked suspiciously out the window and said, "Won't 2-049 affect the ordinary people on the streets?" From their journey underground to the carriage, sealed artifact 2-049 had already caused 6 sluggish incidents, 2 of which were targeted at him. He had been jolted awake by Captain Dunn and Leonard Mitchell respectively. The rate of the sluggish effect was rather alarming. The beautiful, black-haired Lady Lorada explained with a lazy tone.
No worries, 2-049 will target humanoid creatures within 5 meters of it first. The closer you are to it, the easier it is for you to be chosen. As long as there are 3 people surrounding it, people who happen to be around when the carriage steers past will not be affected.
What a weird sealed artifact. Klein thought as he continued his arm exercises. Dunn and the rest of the Nighthawks did not speak on the journey to Ray Bieber's house. They were paying close attention to each other's condition. Only Lorada wore a nonchalant look. At times, she took in the sights of Tingen's not-so-clean streets, and at other times, she praised Backlund's underground water system. Soon after, the familiar building finally entered Klein's line of sight. The group of 6 made their way to the 3rd level while observing each other. The door to Ray Bieber's house was labeled with the Tingen Police Department symbol, indicating that entry was forbidden to unauthorized personnel. As Dunn did his stretching exercises, he took out a key. He opened the newly changed lock, then turned around, allowing Iyer Harson, who was carrying the black chest, to enter first.
With a loud thud, the sealed artifact in the black chest knocked violently once again, even more violent than before. This made Iyer Harson's arm waver from side to side uncontrollably. It even made Klein suspect that the chest would be pounded open in time. Klein quickly noticed that Captain Dunn's movements were becoming sluggish. He was about to wake him up when a buzz sounded in his brain. His brain became numb. The scenes before his eyes played as though they were in slow motion. Didn't they say that it only affects one person at a time? Klein's thoughts quickly became sluggish.
At this moment, the prepared Lorada and Borja woke each of them up respectively by pushing them. Having his thought processes and vision restored, Klein looked around with lingering fear. He nearly blurted out, "Didn't you say that 2-049 can only affect one person at a time?" Thankfully, I did not stop my stretches, Iyer Harson said with a mechanical tone.
When sealed artifact 2-049 enters its berserk mode, it can affect up to 2 people at once. We can confirm that Ray Bieber is indeed a descendant of the Antigonus family.
Lorada let out a faint laugh. She looked at Klein and said,
2-049 becomes very agitated when it meets a descendant of the Antigonus family, even if only their scent remains. Its abilities would also increase considerably. I believe you would be able to understand its feelings.
Well, I don't. Klein asked curiously. So, is it a living creature?
Lorada smiled but did not reply him directly.
You'll know in a while. As long as Ray Bieber hasn't escaped Tingen, 2-049 will lead us to him.
Klein could only put his other questions on hold as he walked around the room with the Nighthawks. Amid the loud and violent thumping from the chest, they locked the door, walked down the stairs, and returned to the carriage. Iyer Harson looked out the window several times and confirmed that there were no pedestrians within a 5-meter radius of them. He then placed the black chest on the ground and twisted the mechanical switch to release its spiritual restraints. The violent thumping stopped suddenly, slipping the entire carriage into silence. Not even the breaths of the Nighthawks could be heard.
Klein held his breath as the black chest opened slowly. A sharp, ear-piercing creak echoed through the carriage.
The chest fell open as a slender brown arm extended out. It was about the length of a child's finger. 2 arms pressed forward one after another as an object about the size a normal human being's palm appeared bit by bit in front of Klein and company. It had clear elbow, finger, and knee joints, covered in an oil-stained brown cloth. Its face was painted with the colors of a clown, red and yellow. It was a wooden puppet with a weird appearance. 2-049 lifted its head and looked at Klein with its pure black eyes.
Its rigid mouth slowly parted to reveal a clown-like smile.